everyone, it is Friday Eve and you are listening to a brand new episode of Rival and Queen. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Sarah.
Happy Thursday, Sarah.
Happy Thursday. I'm so happy.
I know. If you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see that Sarah
looks like a homeless person.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, but she's in full post-ski mode. The toque, the white shirt, snow bunny.
I'm literally fresh off the ski hill. And I just made that joke because my hair's was frozen 2 hours ago, in 2 ice chunks. And so I look like a little disheveled, if I'm being honest.
Extra curly today. You're beaming. You're so happy. You were just singing intensely before we
I gotta tell you, best day of my life. I went skiing today. It wasn't the best day of my life, but it was a great day. And I'm beaming ear to ear. And when I ski, I don't know why, the only thing I listen to is Katy Perry. And I never listen to Katy Perry.
Teenage Dream. That's the only one I can think of.
Oh, I listen to all of them. I could tell you them all right now.
Fireworks?
No, that wasn't in the mix today. But
Wow.
Never Really Cares was really on repeat. And California Girls is really on repeat. And Extraterrestrial is really on repeat.
Oh, I like that one.
And she's got one other one that I love. And I'm just cruising to those down the ski hill. Bopping. Why?
It's your mood today. I don't know.
It's my ski mood. It's only Katy Perry. I want no other music.
I just noticed I have my arm around you for some reason.
I like it.
Very comfortable.
Can I tell you about my day? Because I'm so excited.
Go. Please go on.
Oh, This Is How We Do is another great ski song by Katy Perry. Mark's laughing. Mark wouldn't come skiing with me today, but I went to Wentworth. It's not the biggest ski hill, but I was just so happy to be back in the snow. And what I've decided, I've made a resolution to make myself this happy every week. I think because I can't go to Newfoundland unless this changes, I'm going to go skiing one day every week, Monday or Wednesday, I think. And because there's not a lot of snow there, I've decided, so it's not tough skiing, and the runs aren't that challenging, but
Easy.
I'm going to work on jumps and tricks this season. And so today, Jess Eamon was there, one of our friends who's been on the podcast a couple of times, and with her boyfriend, Logan, who's lovely. And he is a snowboarder, but likes to do jumps. So he was teaching me how to do some nice jumps and land them a bit better.
Okay, so just don't injure yourself.
Oh, no, for sure. This is how I'll hurt myself.
And you'll be so upset.
No, I'll be very upset.
But for those of you who don't know, Sarah gets a cold. It is she's upset.
Oh, I just get depressed when I'm sick. But no, I'd be upset if I hurt myself. But I did work on my 360s, my turns while I'm skiing, and those are better. So I got to keep practicing those.
Well, next time you go, which I'm assuming is next Monday,
next Wednesday.
Get a video. We need to see this footage.
You know what? I'll get the girls to take one. It's not going to look that good, but what I'm saying is by the end of the season, I'm going to be excellent at doing 360s while I'm skiing down the hill, really improve my backwards skiing, and I'm going to be good at doing a good jump. And I want to learn to do one trick on this, the dance floor is what Logan called it. I don't know what it is, but some sort of thing.
Stay tuned, everyone.
So that's
our next YouTube video is going to be just this ongoing, the ones you made us watch, some
the ski videos.
Yeah, these Hallie skiers, but that's going to be Sarah. We're going to have a YouTube playlist just for ski tricks.
Those are big mountain skiers. Right. I'm going to be doing the babyest trick, but that's what I want to learn this year because
we're here for
I can't push myself to go do any tough runs. So, I'll just learn how to do jumps.
I love it.
Ashley, how was your day?
I had a great day. I spent the morning bright and early with a sweet little puppy named Daisy, which if you have listened or seen our social media is Sarah's niece.
My puppy niece.
Her puppy niece, Jennifer Murphy's little baby, and she was so sweet. I had the best time. And I just miss her little face for the rest of the day.
I mean, I was on my way skiing to the ski hill and I was jealous that you had her. I was like, oh, Daisy.
I know. I said to Jen, I'm like, if Sarah's never available again, I'm available. I'm close to your work. And she said, yeah, Sarah's really possessive about her. So I don't know about that. But I was like, but if she's skiing, which you might be, there's a window for me, for Auntie Ash. I can't wait.
I think that's great. You can be her ski day buddy.
Yeah.
She'll love that. Oh, I love her.
She loved Jeff too, which is funny. I feel like she could just sense that he wasn't giving her maybe enough attention or something. I maul the dogs because I love them so much. And she just kept kind of like barking at him and being like, look at me.
I was going to ask you, because Jeff isn't naturally like a huge dog person. So I was wondering if he was fond of Daisy.
He thought she was cute. Jeff is always kind of in between and doesn't go too high or too low. So he's just even keel,
true.
Literally.
Yeah.
And so no, we had a great morning.
But she's going to win him over.
Oh, easily, especially if she's popping in every other week.
There we go.
I can't wait.
Jeff, mark your calendar. She's coming back. Do you know what she'll do though? And I actually think this is really cute. And I really like this about her because she's bad. And I think this is a great quality. Like, because I'm like, she knows how to like be bad and like get what she wants. But I think it's fabulous. So if you're not giving her enough attention, she'll like look at you and then she'll go and find your shoe and carry it out in front of you and just drop it on the ground. And if you don't do anything, she'll then proceed to chew it. But she's not like, she's no interest in the shoe. She just wants to be,
she knows how
she's telling
works.
You, it's time for you to play with me.
No, she was so good. God, I love her. So it's really interesting, Sarah. Let's talk about our guest, because this time last year we had this guest on, which was Verena Rigz.
And we love Verena.
We love her.
Verena is a clinician, nurse practitioner, and a poet. And she is just a beautiful soul. We love her so much.
Newly married.
Freshly married. Her and Christopher. God love them.
She's still glowing. She's so happy. It was so nice to see her. And I feel like we just need to have her on once a year just to reconnect every January.
I think it just makes us feel so good. So we're doing every January. Verena's coming back on. So you can mark your calendar for next year.
And Verena, now you know, you'll definitely be back next January 2022.
So this week's episode, we had Verena in, and what we talked about was how to lead with love. And, you know, it's been a very big year this past year, especially for Verena. She's a frontline worker, the Black Lives Matter movement, and getting married. So there was a lot of things and a lot of different emotions that came up. So in this week's episode, we really checked in with her to see how she's been taking care of herself this past year. And so we touched on things like letting go of what we can't control, watching our thoughts, how we actually nourish ourselves and start to do that. We talked a lot about sleep.
Mm-hmm. Setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries was a really big one. And then we also dove in and learned about her latest poem, Rain, which is so beautiful.
And she looks beautiful.
I know, the video is incredible. So we'll share it through our Instagram, but you can go check it out on Verena's Instagram at any time at Verena Rigz on Instagram. And it's under her IGTV. And we'll have all that stuff linked in the show notes as well. But it was a beautiful conversation. I think we got a lot out of it.
She is so wise. I love listening to her speak. So we know everyone's going to enjoy this.
It's good for the soul. So saddle up. Happy Thursday.
And if you want to listen to the episode from last year, which was in January, as we said, it was episode 24. So go back. You could maybe listen to that one and then listen to this one as a nice follow-up, or just listen to this one. Do what you want.
We love you guys. If you enjoy this episode, please like or subscribe or give us a review if you're feeling extra generous. Or if you think someone will enjoy this, go ahead and share it with them. We'd really appreciate that.
We love that.
Bye, guys.
Well, welcome back, Verena. We're so excited that you're joining us again. So much has happened, as we were just saying, in the last year. Mm-hmm. We bump into you, not enough. We'd like to see you more, but so much has happened. You got married.
Mm-hmm. Big congratulations.
Thank you. Such a beautiful day.
It was wonderful.
I saw you that day.
It was the best day ever. It's crazy.
I was walking by the public gardens and I happened to look and I saw this bride and all these people and I was like, that's Verena.
Radiating.
Yeah, looked from afar, but yeah.
Aw. I really do run into her all the time.
I know. It's really funny. Yeah. I love it.
We love that. And we're so happy to have you back. Like we were just saying, we can't believe it's been a full year because it's been a big year.
I'm happy to be here. It has been a big year. A lot.
A lot has happened.
Yeah.
And not as much good.
No, but I think the reason we were so, well, no, a lot of good things have happened as well. And like you got married and like there have been some really great things about this last year. But I think we were really excited to get you back in because we enjoyed speaking with you so much last year. It was just a really surprising conversation. We got into a lot about faith, but also how to live by like guiding principles and things like that. So if you're new here and you want to go back and listen to that episode, I highly recommend it. But I think just given everything that's been happening this year with COVID, you're a clinician, so you're working as a nurse, as a clinician in the field. And then also with the Black Lives Matter movement, you've been talking out a lot about that and even how to take care of yourself this year. And you also got married and have been finding ways to celebrate in a very strange time. And so we really wanted to get you back here to talk about how this past year has been for you, but also how you are taking care of yourself in the world today.
That's a lot. Let's get into it.
I also have to say, the episode we did with you is my mom's like favorite episode. I think she's listened to, and she doesn't listen to all of them because I don't know, but she brings you up from time to time. She's like, "Oh, I love Verena." Like, okay,
Let me back on to
yeah. So funny.
So tell, like, I guess just like even high level as just like get it off your chest. How have you been this last year?
I've been good. I've been well. There's been a lot that's gone on. But I think this past year has really helped me realize that we control the narrative. And how much of a part do I have to play in the circumstances that are happening in my life? What do I have control over? And in regards to things that I have control over, what am I doing to address them? What am I doing about them? And with the things I don't have control over, how much of my time am I spending sweating that stuff?
Right.
Really being intentional goes back to, my poem that we referenced in the last episode that we did together, but really being intentional with the energy that I bring to every table, but also the choices that I make, including just my thought patterns,
Right.
what I'm doing with my time, my habits or trends of my thought patterns. So am I telling myself stories about something? And what kind of narrative am I playing into? Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. There's a lot there.
No, and I think like when you talk about narrative and like sweating the things you can't control, I think this has been a year where we've all kind of been faced with, from many different things, like loss of control, especially with COVID. We've been asked to stay inside. We've been, faced with kind of either loss of work or loss of stability and routine and what's normal for us. Maybe we can't see our family. And then you wonder about what's going to happen in the future. And like a lot of that is stuff we can't necessarily control, right?
And I think I'm of the unpopular opinion that this year was actually, I choose to see the good in it. And I choose to see all the ways that it's forced us to grow, because we are so fixated on control. We are a society that is obsessed with being in control when we are human and we are fickle, and there's very little that we actually have control over. And sometimes the things that we do have control over, I don't think we realize we have control over. And the things that we don't have control over, we're so obsessed with trying to control them.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of us this year was a necessary kick in the butt. That's not to say that COVID is a good thing, right? But I always believe that with challenges, there are lessons to be learned. There's opportunity for growth. There's opportunity for learning, even through suffering. So what am I doing with this hurt? What am I doing with this discomfort? What am I doing with feeling really uncomfortable with being out of control right now?
I think I'm with you on that. I felt out of control for a while, but now I feel like I'm more in the best place I've been in my entire life. But I think that you had to go through a lot of those really tough, like having no control over what was happening to realize that's okay.
I also feel like we glorify or adorn problems a lot of the times, that we magnify them. And in doing that, we unknowingly and unintentionally minimize the good that's there and the blessings that are there. Mm-hmm. And everyone's circumstances are different. But this is how I kind of chose to approach this year. There was a lot of tough stuff, even for my family, all who are frontline healthcare workers or essential workers. Literally everyone in my family. Wow. So it's been difficult. We've had to have difficult conversations early on. Christopher and I both knew. He proposed in February, and we both knew immediately as soon as lockdown started, we were not waiting to get married. Mm-hmm. And there was like neither a skip to beat there, because we just didn't want to wait on a tomorrow that we didn't know when it's going to come, right? And everyone's circumstances are different. But we were a lot more focused on the actual sacrament of getting married as opposed to the hype of it. And I come from a culture where big weddings are the norm, and we were looking, pre-COVID, we'd be looking at easily a 500-600 person wedding, and that'd be like with a tight guest list. And that was not something I ever wanted from childhood, right? Like I always wanted simple and small to begin with, but there was always this cultural expectation. And so neither of us were really, we kind of took it as a blessing to roll with the punches and focus on the gift that is our love. And really all we needed to get married was each other at the altar that day. So it was a beautiful thing to not let the hype of expectation and the potential disappointments get in the way of wanting to get married and start our lives together.
That's so nice. I think that actually happened for a lot of people in those situations. They're able to kind of keep their circle tight and kind of do it more intimately. And COVID was kind of an excuse, but in a good way.
And it's nice to find a reason to celebrate and like ways to celebrate and kind of just adjust them.
Yeah.
And probably also refreshing for you to give you something to focus on, like you said, to have gratitude for. Yeah. And shape, this year around.
Without the day of the wedding was a dream. and it was unfortunate. Like my brother couldn't attend our wedding. He's a doc in Nashville who's been working in ICU since the pandemic started. His siblings couldn't come to the wedding. A lot of our other family members who are abroad, right, couldn't come, but they were able to attend it live. And we were able to kind of just toss out all these things that like we felt were unnecessary, but we really just wanted to have a celebration that was reasonable given the circumstances. And it was a true celebration of joy. But you wouldn't have known, like even the day before the wedding, even 12 hours before, anything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Oh, no. Like our DJ had to cancel. He had to get tested for COVID, but our DJ was bringing all the mics and sound equipment to the venue, and the venue had nothing. I didn't have my dress yet. He didn't have his tux yet. Like everything and anything. But it was kind of, I believe in spiritual warfare. I really do. And I feel like the closer you are to where you're supposed to be, the harder things are going to get. And it's a true test. And the day before the wedding was a true test. And you just kind of had to laugh through it, right?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
You could have both shown up in jean jackets. It still was going to go ahead.
That's it, right? That's just it.
Verena always looks amazing.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
I love that you talked about a little bit about thought patterns. And I think one of the things this year has taught me, and I think you're kind of touching on, is like we can't afford to be lazy in our thought patterns, like in what we choose to focus on. It really is about, like you said, choosing to focus on the things we can control, what we are thinking about, where we are paying attention. Has there been anything that you've started doing this year to kind of help support you in that and where you focus?
So first of all, being mindful of my thoughts first and foremost. So when I'm thinking of thought patterns, I'm thinking of, it's really easy to kind of give into a thought pattern of like you being a victim. It's like, oh, woe is me, right? Poor me, poor me, poor me. And at the beginning, when everything happened, it was, the wedding stuff, right? And it was like, I'm going to interrupt this circular and negative thought pattern, and I'm going to challenge it, right? So paying attention to what I'm thinking is first and foremost. So what story am I telling myself here? Second of all, how am I going to interrupt this? And third of all, how am I going to redirect this? Right? Wade Smith, God rest his soul, who was the principal of Citadel High School, who mentored and raised so many Scotian youth. He and his wife, Sherry Jackson Smith, shout out Sherry. Wade Smith was always focused on solutions only, right? And I didn't go to Citadel High, but I did have the absolute pleasure of knowing Wade. And it was known that on the side, like his door, he had a sign that said solutions only, right? But with this year, there was a lot of grief as well. Mm-hmm. And so I also think it's important to not dismiss whatever it is that you're grieving. It is perfectly okay to grieve the fact that you thought something would go this way. It's no longer going this way. So I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to let myself grieve it. But I'm not going to let myself sit in it for too long. Because that's when you get in these thought patterns of self-pity, right? When the reality is, may this be the worst of my problems.
Right.
The reality is things could really be so much worse. I'll honor the fact that I had other expectations, and I will grieve in this moment, and I will leave room for that. However, I need to move forward. What's the solution?
I also think sometimes when you're able to sit with those things and give things space and room to grieve and even be in the discomfort, you then have the opportunity to ask yourself, is there ways this could go better than I expected? Or is there other ways that this could go that would be better than what I had originally planned?
Without sounding preachy, because you were asking what have I been doing that's helped with that. For me, it's always prayer. It's always prayer. And in a practice of faith, so I am a Christian, a Coptic Christian, Orthodox Christian, and a practice in faith is always recognizing that there's so much that's beyond my control, right? And so releasing that need to be fixated on control and just saying, I surrender. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to play my part and put in my effort and, put my work in. But I'm also going to, when I surrender that control, that need for compulsive control, that's freedom. That's freedom. And I find that in prayer because that's what grounds me. And that's what helps me recognize that I am but a human. And my control is a lot less than I think. That I have a lot less control over things than I'd like to think. But when I release that and I surrender, that's where I find my true peace and my true freedom.
So good. Just keep talking. Oh, yeah, it's so true. I don't know. I like what you said, Sarah, about recognizing kind of what you would want as an ideal situation, because I started kind of shifting that way a bit. It's what I read Untamed by Glennon Doyle, and she talks about that, and she talks to people that are grieving or have lost loved ones or ill, whatever it is. And she says, just write a letter, to that person or to your ex that maybe abused you, and think about what the ideal situation would be. What does love look like? Or what does it mean to be a loving mother? And it's just so, seems so, I don't know. It's very therapeutic. I did it once, but and it does feel nice. What's my ideal situation that I want to get myself out of? What does that look like?
That's where my first, and I always called it my only love poem, but then I wrote my poem for Christopher that I recited at the altar.
Yes.
But that my first love poem that I ever wrote, that will always be my mantra of what love is to me, came from that. It came from me learning all about what love isn't. And shortly after learning this life lesson, I was quite young and naive and innocent of heart. But from that lesson, or shortly after learning that lesson, I was tasked with the task of reciting a poem at a wedding. And so I was thinking, Laura, you got some sense of humor, right? I don't know what love is. And then there came this poem. And that was a very therapeutic mission for me, because when I write through things, that's how I know I've worked through them. And as soon as I wrote that poem, I was good. Because the poem turned out to be a representation of what love, my ideal love, looks like. Yeah.
Oh, and then Christopher came along.
Oh, God bless him.
We love Christopher.
He's so wonderful. He's so wonderful.
And you guys are beautiful together. Like, you can just
Thanks.
see, you guys have such a nice relationship. It's beautiful to see.
I feel very fortunate, and I feel very fortunate to have lived through this pandemic, planning a wedding with him, because that teaches you a lot about someone.
And Christopher passed.
Oh, with flying colors. It taught me a lot about myself, too. And in saying all this, and when I'm hearing you both speak, a thought in the back of my mind when speaking of, like, paying attention to these thought patterns and wondering to ourselves, what would I like to see? It all boils down to what and who is most important in my life. Mm-hmm. And when I focus on my moral compass and my values, because we can't set boundaries if we don't have our own kind of code of ethics, right? Our own moral code. And if we don't sit with ourselves and really figure out what it is my personal values are, because we think we may all have the same values, but some of us may value different things more than others, right? So when we pay attention to what our values are, that guides us. And the more in tune I am with what and who is most important to me, the more genuine and, what's the word I'm looking for? Authentic. That's the word I'm looking for. So when I pay attention to those things, and when I'm in tune with those values, those things will guide my actions. And thus my actions become a reflection of my authentic self, my true self.
And probably nurturing as well. Something I learned about this year, which I've never heard about before, and you may have, is like your rule of life. And essentially it is like the things you need to do to care for yourself, to be at your best.
Listen, that goes back to the questions I always ask. What do you do when you're well?
And so one of the things that I've realized is, like, I mean, an easy one is, like, I always need to meditate. I need to write. Like, I know writing is really big for you. But another one that I've realized is super nurturing to me is I have to take time off. Like, I need at least a full day where I do no work. Like, I don't open my computer. I don't touch my phone. And I need to fill that time with friends or family that I genuinely, like, can feel nourished by. But noticing that that's something that, like, without that, I'm starting to deplete the tank.
And so I don't know if you saw this clip of when I had spoken at the Her event. I had also asked people, so pay attention to what you look like, what do you do when you're well, but also communicate those things to the people around you, because then that can help serve as almost a barometer of how you're doing if you don't have the words to verbalize that you're not in the best of states right now. So if I know that you normally do those things when you're well, if you're not taking a day off, and if I see you working consistently and constantly, I'm going to ask you, hey, Sarah, when did you last do this? When did you last take a day off? Are you meditating? Right? And you may not have the words to say, I'm burning out, but that may help. Me simply asking you that question may help lovingly push you in a direction of self-compassion.
I love that. Well, and I think I'm noticing that with you too, because this month Ashley's on like a very focused like health reflection, which I love, but you've been going to bed early and getting a good night's sleep, and that makes such a difference for
I was hoping I was hoping this conversation would go here today.
But the thing is with that, I think a few times we've been in social situations and people are like, oh, you're not eating sugar, you're not drinking. And I'm like, but I actually feel like I don't feel restricted because I feel like I'm doing what my like
Your body needs
intuition,
you
my
to do.
body and soul is like, these are the things that make you feel good, and doing these things, like you're saying, is what keeps you.
I think sleep
full.
is your number one thing.
Yeah.
Salt?
Sleep.
Am I more
listen.
pleasant when I'm rested?
No, it's not about being more pleasant. It's that you're not anxious or like, you know what I mean? Like I can see you are more at ease.
For sure. For sure.
You know?
I wish the husband was here for this one. So,
Well, you know what? Every morning,
Does he see these things?
Jeff asks me. We have this conversation as soon as we wake up. We wake
How'd
up
you
at the
sleep?
same time. Yeah, how was your
Liz?
sleep? And I'm always like, oh, like if it's bad, I'm like, don't ask. Or if it's good, I'm like, I had the best sleep. But it makes it sets your day up, right?
I don't know if you noticed, but the post that I had done on boundaries, one of the first things that I wrote on boundaries, personal boundaries with ourselves, is sleep hygiene. So before I met Christopher, I didn't realize that I didn't sleep and I didn't eat. I gained 20 pounds since I met the man. I never realized that I didn't eat.
We're taking care of
I would literally be running clinic all day, and I could eat my first meal in the evening and not even notice. Running off 3 hours of sleep thinking that was normal.
No.
And then a shift happened where, and I just said this to someone yesterday, I remember I was driving down the Bedford Highway and I was thinking about care, right? I'm really good at taking care of people. We know this. I'm a nurse practitioner. This is what I do every day, but also my personal life. That's my jam. But I had a very humbling moment when I realized this simple reality that I was very poor at caring for myself. And if you think of yourself almost like a child, like if you were to tell me, Verena, I can't connect because I need to sleep, I would honor that and be like, yes, of course. I would honor that boundary. Why can't I do that for myself? Why do I not love myself enough to set that boundary? And so probably 3 or 4 months after first meeting him, after we started dating, I started to realize that he had a bedtime. Like he was really good with his meal prep, and he actually made sure that he got sleep. And I'm like, wow, this was revolutionary to me, right?
What a man.
And I'm like, oh, well, he cares about his sleep. Maybe I should care about mine. So I was driving on the Bedford Highway having this conversation with myself. And I just said to myself, I'm like, sleep like you love yourself, Verena. Eat like you love yourself. And it sounds like such a simple concept. Because I will happily, if someone's sick, I'll happily bring you meals. I'll make sure that you're fed, right? But why is it so difficult to do that for self? And my life has changed since I discovered sleep. No word of a lie. I'm a nicer person. I'm a more patient person. I'm a more productive person. And it's very interesting because when you start to set those boundaries in caring for yourself, you learn a lot about the relationships around you as well. And so the people around you, the healthier relationships in your life, the relationships that really want to see you thrive, those are the people who will start to honor those new boundaries of yours, even if they're new. And they'll start to applaud them. One of my sisters, one of my dearest friends, and she couldn't attend our wedding, but she's always with us in spirit. She lives in Boston, and she and I have these phone dates all the time, right? And so usually when my husband works nights or whatever, we'll arrange a call. And she now knows. It's amazing because she's like, no, we can't talk after this time because you need to sleep.
Amazing.
And I'm like, sis is so protective over my wellness, and those are the kind of relationships you need in your life. People who will love and honor and encourage your healthy boundaries in order for you to do something as simple as being physically well. But I don't think we realize how important and imperative sleep is for every aspect of our bodies.
I love that. I'm with you. I love this so much because it's changed my world in the last, even just
the
month.
last 3 weeks is like a game changer for Ash.
Yeah, December was not good for sleep for me, and I was just not. When you wake up and you set, that's the tone for the day, and you couldn't really choose it.
I love it.
You know what I mean? You wake up and you're like, as much as I try and be positive and get ready and think about the day I've got and it's going to be great, it's not the same when you feel tired. It brings you down.
And how you start your day. So that's the first thing, right? You wake up feeling rested or not. And what you do in the few moments after you wake up. I'm a firm believer that those are the most important moments of your day.
I'm with you. I've got a whole new morning routine, nighttime routine, and it's changed my life. Yeah. But Sarah, I'm going to start calling you sometimes late at night because Sarah likes to
text me.
Yeah. She gets into like projects and she's just up late and
listen.
But you still sleep well.
I sleep well. It's not like...
so that sometimes for creatives, like I would wake up in the middle of the night with a poem. And I'd have to get up and write it or else it'd escape me.
Yeah.
So it's difficult sometimes.
I keep a notebook by my bed.
Yes.
But like, so last night I was home early. We were out and I was in bed by 11, but I'll tell you right now, I didn't go to sleep till 1:30.
I knew you would say
laid
that.
in bed and read for 2.5 hours. But you know what?
Read a book or read on your phone? Okay.
No, I read a book.
All right.
And I woke up totally refreshed at 8:30 on my own. And I was happy. So I don't need necessarily as much sleep, but I've recently changed my habits. I don't use my phone as my alarm anymore. This was a game changer. Ashley got me on this. I bought one of those sunrise alarms.
Amazing.
And now I don't set an alarm and I wake up every morning. For the last week, I've just woken up rested and I feel great. But I can read an actual book at night. And I'm still like, that's still rest
and it was Saturday.
for me.
That was their big night.
Setting boundaries with our phones. We are overly accessible. And that's normalized. It's normalized. Like some people getting upset with you if they call you and they can't get a hold of you, or they text you and 11 p.m. and you didn't reply. That's not healthy. That's not normal. And one of the greatest life hacks that changed my sleep habits was my phone automatically goes onto silent at 9 p.m. Then that's if my phone is not already on silent. I love DND, like the do not disturb mode, or the bedtime feature and with the alarm clock app. I have yet to ditch my phone as an alarm clock, but now that you said
it changed a lot for me in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that's not the first thing I touch in the morning anymore. And
amazing.
So I get up and I forget my phone actually sometimes. It'll be like 10 o'clock and I'll be upstairs starting something, looking to message someone. And I'm like, oh, I have no idea
I've
where my
done
phone
that too.
is.
I keep mine in my office plugged in on like the side of my desk. So it's out of sight in the morning.
I love it.
Don't, unless there's something immediate that I think, I have to look at my calendar or whatever. But the consistency in wake up times, I find, is just that program, like you're saying, your husband going to bed at a certain time, just roughly having those hours in place. Your body gets so used to it. It's so nice. Like you wake up on the weekend at
happy.
your time and happy.
Life is so much better when we are kinder to our bodies.
Yeah.
And that and that's in keeping with also your diet, with how you are nurturing and nourishing your body. Right? You know that if you eat certain things, you're not going to feel well. So why do I keep doing that to myself? Right? But now where you're learning to honor, what makes my body feel good and what doesn't, without being pressured. Right?
Yeah. When the goal is like just for your own wellness, it's a lot easier to do those things, I think.
And when you're just trying to eat healthy, like I'll still eat after this month's over, anything, but I just want to eat like healthy things that I eat.
Or what
and
you
I feel
want.
so fulfilled. Yeah. Like listening to your body, that intuition of like, is this going to make me feel good? Do I want this? Like it's hard, but you have to do it because a lot of the times, this isn't going to be good. Don't eat it.
I remember once years ago, I was working in acute care medicine and I got in the habit of just eating like just junk, especially night shifts. And that's back when I was an RN. And I remember I was talking to some colleagues and like just laughing about what a typical order of mine would be at some fast food restaurant. And listen, I could eat. Like I could eat. And I like today I would never be able to eat anywhere near as much. And I just remember someone saying to me, someone who loved me very much, and she said, Verena, that's not hunger eating. And that never left me. That comment never left me, because I'm like, that is so true. Right? So really thinking, when you're saying thinking about, like, is this going to make my body feel good? We do so much by habit.
Mm-hmm.
And paying more and more attention to the reasons behind what we do, why we do what we do.
Well, and looking at the habits that nourish you and the ones that don't, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting.
And it's
applicable in all aspects of life, even in relationships.
Totally.
There's certain things in friendships that just aren't kosher, or things that aren't okay with you, but you keep it moving, or you keep pretending things are okay. Like, why do you keep doing that to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
You know it doesn't feel good. You know every time you walk away from a certain encounter, you don't feel like your best self.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's nice to actually kind of talk about this and reflect on the things that nourish us and that don't. And it helps everyone. Like you said, it goes back to boundaries. Setting the boundaries.
Everything goes back to boundaries.
That help you kind of show up as your best self.
The only thing that's coming to mind when I think about that and you evolving as a person and setting different boundaries is like those other people, if they're a bit toxic or negative, they don't want to accept the new boundaries. You accept boundaries, but I find that I know in, circle of friends that this has happened, and even over the last year or 10 months, and people have changed and adjusted their lives, and other people don't want to accept it. But I find who cares?
That's not their place.
Yeah.
So I actually just gave a talk about this for the youth in my church last Sunday over Zoom. But just around boundaries, and this is what my IGTV live will be about this week, is how to set our own personal boundary maps. Your boundaries aren't there to dictate other people's actions. Mm-hmm. The boundaries that you set in place are to dictate your actions. And it is very foolish and naive of us to operate in everyday life thinking or assuming that you and I have the same boundary map. Because we don't.
No.
And some of the closest people to you may have a very different boundary template than you do. And you don't have to have the same boundary template in order to love and accept and honor each other's boundaries. But the problem is when... So you have people who have different types of boundaries, right? So there are people who have very, very rigid boundaries. Then you have people who have very, very porous boundaries, very loose boundaries, aka none. And then there's a spectrum, right? And healthy boundaries kind of sits right in the middle. Now, a lot of the population isn't in the middle. And we all have reasons as to why our boundaries are more rigid or porous. But that's only something that like you could work on. So until I realize why my boundaries are so rigid or why my boundaries are so porous, I can't even address working towards healthy boundaries, because I need to figure out, why am I this way? So, for example, people who have lived through trauma is a boundary of safety that has been crossed, right? And so when something traumatic has happened, a boundary has been crossed. And so if something has repeatedly happened in that sense, you have people who have a trauma response, and with the trauma response can come very, very rigid boundaries, right? So people who stonewall and don't know how to let anyone in. And then you can have very porous boundaries, so people who have no concept of what healthy boundaries look like, right? So when we think of these things, we could think of physical assault, sexual assault, but these things happen in the realm of emotional abuse or emotional neglect or emotional pain that has happened early on that has had some form of influence on my ability or inability to create boundaries. right? And when we are born, we're born with no boundaries, right? So that everyone in our world as infants are people who we trust. But as we grow, it's the job and the role of the adults in our lives and the other people in our lives to teach us those things. And sometimes we can learn and unlearn healthy and unhealthy boundary patterns from those people. And as adults, the onus is on me to pay attention to, do I lack the ability to create healthy boundaries? And if so, how do I work on that in order to have relational success and personal well-being?
Yeah, it goes back to personal well-being all the time.
If whoever's listening and doesn't have boundaries, just start writing them down, because I feel like this is a hard thing for people
Or the
to kind of
things that,
yeah.
Which is why I broke
happen
them
when you feel
down.
good.
Like
Yeah.
when I try and speak with them, right?
Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier for me to like break this down right now if I could draw and whatnot, but
And
I'll be
it's
doing that
never
on my
too late to
IGTV live, so
start.
it'll be easier for people to visualize.
No, that's awesome.
But when I had initially brought up this conversation on my Instagram, I had broken it down. So personal boundaries, setting boundaries with others, and then how to honor the boundaries of others, right? Because it's a lot easier kind of when you break it down.
them.
Yeah.
Into different buckets.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I want us to talk about while we're kind of here, and I think this will tie into this conversation as well, is your most recent poem that you put out this last year. Can you tell us a bit about that and kind of how that came about and the inspiration for that?
There's a ancient poet, Rumi, who's an all-time favorite, who has a quote that says, "Raise your words, not your voice. It is the rain that grows flowers, not thunder." And with the resurgence of the whole Black Lives Matter movement, with the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the list goes on, it was very easy, or it can be very easy when you're dealing with that kind of pain, to one, succumb to a feeling of absolute helplessness, or two, succumb to a temptation to be thunder, because I get it. And people have every right to be angry. And there was a point where I was angry, sad, grieved, and I mean, still am in ways, right? But I had to really be honest with myself and ask myself, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with all these feelings? Solutions only, right? And I really had to figure out, what is the narrative that I'm going to bring to the table here? Because contrary to popular practice, I hold a view that may be unpopular, but I can't speak about the dehumanization of people, particularly Black lives. I can't speak about the dehumanization of people while dehumanizing others. And it was overwhelming. And it was difficult, I think, for a lot of BIPOC people, dealing with this overwhelm of emotions, but also this overexposure of this very private pain. Because this is, every time an innocent Black person is killed, those names become household names in Black households. That is a normal experience for a lot of people to be familiar with these names and the stories of how these people were killed. So to go from that, being relatively private, to the rest of the world not really knowing or caring or paying attention, to all of a sudden everyone paid attention and everyone wanted to know and everyone wanted to talk to you about it and everyone wanted to ask you questions and everyone wanted to be a self-appointed ally. And it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful in the sense that it was so great to see people care. It was also disheartening for some people to see some people who were, racist towards them, caring with such loud microphones.
Right.
And then it was overwhelming to see dehumanization of people. There were so many different dynamics there. There were so many different dynamics. And it was really difficult, I think. And BIPOC people are not a monolith. BIPOC in and of itself encompasses so many different complexities. And so one person can never, ever, ever speak on behalf of everyone. That's not fair nor reasonable to ever expect. And that is something that happens. So I will say that everything I'm speaking is my personal experience. These are my thoughts. These are my views, my experience. My experience is very different than the experiences of others, right? But what I was finding was this overwhelming grief, this overwhelming pain, this overwhelming overexposure of this private pain, this overwhelming struggle navigating being a BIPOC woman in a very white world, whether that's, wherever you live, where you work, whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing where you feel safe and who you feel safe with. And it was actually beautiful because I was able to have great conversations with people who I felt saw me. But I really wanted to be able to try and create space for conversations for anyone that was hurting, regardless of their race or their background. That's where the live, I had the conversations with
Tyler.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And those are really therapeutic, I think, for a lot of people. But it was, I was stuck with this question of, and the reason I wanted to do those conversations or host those conversations was because I was consumed with this question of how do I lead with love? How do we lead with love? Because that will forever be my goal. When, speaking of our values and what and who is most important to us, that will forever be my MO. Mm-hmm. And how do I practice compassion and empathy in the context of such grave pain? And that's where that poem came from. How do I be like rain when it feels a lot easier to be thunder? How do I raise my words and not my voice? How do I speak in a way that can be understood? Yeah.
You're so wise.
Oh,
like heart, just like.
I think so much, but it comes through in that poem, and that you are like leading with love, and I know through that period, and the reason I brought it up based on the conversation with boundaries is because I think, and you spoke to this at that time, that you felt very exposed all of a sudden because now everyone's looking at you like for guidance or to talk to you or see how you're doing, and it's all of a sudden like you can't have a moment to privately process what you're experiencing, right?
I had to withdraw. And sometimes I feel like I still struggle with like a lot of guilt around that. But I really had to withdraw for a bit. Because the amount of like emails and DMs and texts and whatnot, and they're all really well intentioned, but it was too much. It was too much because I was not in a place or position where I felt like I could answer everyone's questions.
I think too at that time, like, I think anyone struggles with, you know, you see people even in their work or their career as artists, when they kind of make that big break of, you know, when they're first being seen, they struggle with that transition. But what I think was maybe even more challenging about this was like, you weren't anticipating this to show up.
No.
Like you knew people were dying and being killed, and like that was something, like you said, you was very aware in your household, but suddenly it was like a spotlight was shone on this for the rest of society, and are now looking at you, and it wasn't like something you were expecting.
No, and it's never something people want attention for. Like that's not, it wasn't, it really made me uncomfortable because it was kind of like, well, we should always care about this. And I think for a lot of people, it was really a little disillusioning. Is that a word? To go back on social media and watch everything go back to status quo. That was gutting. And if I'm being honest, that was the hardest part.
Is when the conversation
because it was, but these things still matter.
It just
Right?
was a lot all at once.
It was a lot all at once and a lot of attention all at once. And you could tell that certain people were doing it just for, like, it was performative allyship. Right? And it felt, I think it was hard for a lot of people to go back on social media and to watch, like, all of a sudden everyone cared about this and then no one cared about it. And again, solutions only. So what am I going to do with those feelings in my personal life? And, you know, it kind of reminds me of, so in my line of work as a clinician, I see death and dying a lot. And I've said before, like, by the time I was in my 20s, I had watched more people die than I could count. And it's interesting because you could look at that and, oh, that's so sad. And it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to be with people in their most vulnerable moments. And this is for anyone who is dealing with a loved one who's going through grief or hardship. When someone first dies, everyone's there. But who's there for the anniversaries? Who's there for the birthday, the first birthday in heaven? Or who's there for graduating, you know, when you graduate without your loved one? Those are the hardest things for people who are grieving. And so that's a much smaller scale of, like, I think the pain that a lot of BIPOC people were feeling when all of a sudden, you know, the whole world cared about this very private pain that was overexposed. And then it was crickets, right? And I think that the lesson there is, how do I be a person of integrity? Because none of us could, there are a lot of causes. And I think a lot of people feel pressure to comment on every cause under the sun and take on all these things. And that's not, you know, it's not very reasonable to expect everyone to be able to be perfect in every way, shape, or form. That's not reasonable, nor attainable, nor human. But how do I, in my life, live so that I will always be working towards being anti-racist? How do I live my life so that I'm always working towards being a soft place for people around me to land? How do I live my life so that people know that they are welcome here? So then I'm freed of this obligation to feel like I have to comment on this and that. You don't have any obligation to perform as though these things matter to you. But we do have a moral obligation to conduct our lives every day, everything in our day-to-day lives. We have an obligation to conduct ourselves in humane, compassionate, empathetic ways. At least to me, that is a moral obligation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less and less about how I advertise myself to be and what I post, and because that's one thing. But what am I doing in my day-to-day?
Mm-hmm.
What are the choices that I make? How do I create inclusive spaces? You know, if you're a parent, how do you encourage inclusion in your family, in your home, with your parenting? Right? These are all things for all of us to think about, and not just when certain things come up in world news where you feel a pressure to speak of them publicly.
Well, it's kind of like developing the policies for how you guide your life, right? Like we talked about, again, going back to like the rule of life. But it's if you take the time to consciously put kind of the practices in place or how you would like to behave, then it's not a default. It's acting with intention, right?
Yeah. It's a lot easier for us. And Lord, forgive me for saying this, because there's a psalm that we recite in church, or a psalm from the Bible, where King David says, talking about sinners, and he says, of who I am chief, right? So I'm sitting here and I'm saying this to you, but I need to work on this myself before anyone else needs to work on it themselves, right? But it's a lot easier to speak about a problem and rah, than it is to really ask myself some hard questions, than to really hold myself accountable in my own life. That's where the hard stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a lot more interested in holding myself accountable, because small change, like big change can't happen without small change.
Mm-hmm.
And unless every one of us is dedicated to that small change, nothing big, nothing in the grand scheme is going to change. You know, and I'm always fascinated by parenting. Always fascinated. And I've like from time, you know what I mean? Like I always read about parenting. I don't have children yet, but that's always something that fascinates me, because that's where it all starts.
100%.
That's where it all starts. Like everything that I am, I give credit to my parents for, man. Because they modeled everything that I'm speaking. My parents taught me anti-racism by how they raised me. And it gets me choked up, because I grew up in like a very homophobic culture. I grew up in a culture that even though we are not white, favors whiteness. Yet still somehow my parents, without the luxury of the education that I had here, they still managed to raise my siblings and I with anti-racism in our home, because they modeled it. The little things. It was their little actions that I witnessed growing up that really ingrained in me these things that are now so pivotal to my being. But it's the small things. And every time we let a small, quote unquote, small comment slide, every time I am a silent bystander, I'm contributing to bigger harm.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm interested in, is how do I be like rain while lovingly trying to hold myself accountable to be the most wholesome, inclusive, welcoming, and loving person I could be.
That's beautiful. And it goes back to caring for yourself.
And setting those boundaries, right? Like a lot of us roll in circles with, like, sometimes you may have friends or people around you who have a tendency to like use humor that's not funny. You know what I mean? And if for 20 years you've had someone in your life who like always uses humor that's just not okay, and you've never said anything about it, it can be very daunting to say, you know what, I don't find that funny. But test that out, man. It's not as hard as you think.
I've done it more times this year than ever before in my life. Things that maybe aren't even funny, but just like poor taste or comments. And I'm just like, you can't say that, or you shouldn't say that. Like, that's all I know, that what to come out of my mouth. You know what I mean? But it makes me feel better because in my mind, I know that these things are wrong, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. And you just kind of have to push yourself to vocalize that. And it's not easy, but it gets easier.
And I think for any people or loved ones who are white, who are listening, that's where a lot of change can happen. Because it's a lot harder for someone if something like a joke is being made where it really is a racist joke, or it's really derogatory towards a particular group of people. It's a lot harder for the people who that's aimed towards to say something. But if someone else who may not be the butt end of that joke says something, that's a lot easier of a way to intercept it. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've done a lot of research on gender diversity, and that's one of the biggest things for change, is actually having men make change or make requests for change or stand up. And that's sometimes something you don't love hearing, but it is that ability that it's easier for them to do it without backlash. And it's the same thing when you, in this context, right? Like, it's easier if you are a white person to make that comment and say, like, stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in that context as well, right?
100%.
So I think it's a nice reminder, and it's a good, I think going back to when this was hyper exposed and everyone was posting about it and talking about it, I think many people kind of made resolutions of how they were going to make change. And hopefully this can just be a good reminder to check in with those resolutions and see how you're doing with that.
And I think, if I may, just piggyback on that, I think it's also important too to have realistic expectations of people. Because a lot of times we don't have realistic expectations of people. No one's going to get it perfect. Especially not the first time. And there needs to be room for error. And I don't mean like error that causes harm. That's different.
Yes.
But I really think it's easy, especially on with online culture, for people to kind of point fingers from behind their keyboards and criticize and critique. And sometimes there is room for that, but I believe that there's room for healthy, constructive, loving conversation. But I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that we need to have realistic expectations of people and of ourselves, and leave room for compassion.
Yes.
I love this so much.
I know. Verena, where can we find your poem online? And where can people find you?
You could find it on the Facebook page.
Yep.
You could find it on my Instagram page or on YouTube.
Perfect.
My Instagram is Verena Rizg, VerenaRizg. My Facebook's the same, and YouTube, same name.
We're going to tag everything in the show notes so you can follow, and we'll be sharing all of this through our Instagram as well. Verena, before we wrap, we've got 2 questions for you. The first.
What's lighting you up right now?
Oh, it's going to sound so cheesy, but
tell us.
No, it's not. It's safe. You can tell us.
I'm really, really enjoying the self-learning that's comes with marriage. Yeah. I'm learning so much about myself, and to allow yourself to be so vulnerable and just you before someone, it really teaches you a lot about yourself, and I'm really enjoying that. Yeah.
I love
Beautiful.
that.
All right, the last question is very easy. We're going to do Queenie Graham's rapid fire round. Can you pick a number between 1 and 100?
8.
8. We love this. All right, let's see. All right, Verena, what is the all-time best dog breed?
Oh my goodness, Yorkies.
Oh.
Yes.
I love dogs. You were quick on that.
You were ready for that one.
Yeah, we want a Yorkie.
I love it. Oh, you're
Amazing.
ready. This is like good timing. Ash, pick a number for me.
90.
90 and going down to the other end of the list
I
here.
am.
All right, let me
Switch it
see
up.
what we got here. We have, what life mystery do you wish you could know the answer to?
What life mystery?
Yeah,
Oh God,
That's a hard one.
there's so many.
I know. But it could be, well, okay, I don't know. We aren't really onto conspiracy theories right now, but
Well, that you could know.
like, could you say like how to travel in time? Aliens?
I think you could say whatever you want to say to that.
Oh, I've skipped down from the question.
I need a minute to think about that.
Okay, I'm going to go with what is your favorite dessert? Right now, I can't have chocolate, so I have been leaning into, like strawberries and whipped cream, and I'm really into it. It's just like a little lighter, but it makes me happy.
I love whipped cream.
I know, it makes everything better.
Homemade, like real whipped cream.
I'm going to give you another question.
Yeah, I don't.
What
that was
skill
too-
do you want to learn right now?
That's a good one.
What skill do I want to learn? Painting.
Painting.
That's a good one.
We like it. Do you have any skills that are in the back of your mind?
Oh my goodness, I wish I could paint or draw or do anything remotely constructive with my hands. That's not a musical instrument.
There's hope for all of us. Well, thank you so much. This has been
Thank you for
so,
having me.
We love having
so
you here.
lovely.
That was right back.
We'll be ready for 2022.
Listen, what next big milestone is coming?
Yeah, once a year we'll have to catch up.
Touch base.
All right,
Not
we
a
love
lessons
you.
learned.
So many. Thanks, Verena.
Thank you for having me.